Hi, you're watching the SMC Journal podcast. I'm Scott Moore, your host. This show is all about performance in IT today. So, commercial software, open source. Can you have both? Well, sure you can. Two open source projects that affect the performance community in a great way are Prometheus for gathering metrics and OpenTelemetry. So many companies getting together, adding time, resources, and code to these projects have helped build a standard in the community, but it also helps expand their commercial software platforms as well. So recently, Dynatrace made an announcement they're actually formalizing an open source project initiative. And because I've got buddies there, I wanted to contact them directly and have them talk about that. So I'm going to bring on my friend Henrik Rexed, who works at Dynatrace, to talk about this initiative within the company. Henrik, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very great, in fact. It's been now more than 11 months or no 10 months or no, never mind. Where I started my adventure at Dynatrace, and everything is going very well and smoothly. The transition, I would say, from the performance engineering world that we were all working on into more on the observability SRE space has been done now. So I feel myself more comfortable in now, to
Well,
be honest.
congratulations. Yeah. Well, great. And welcome to the SMC Journal, my new show. I've been wanting to have you on the show ever since we started this year, but I'm glad we had the chance to get together and talk today. I have some pretty specific questions for you, and I'm hoping you can help me with this. I was doing some research on companies that are doing open source as well as commercial products. And of course, Dynatrace kind of comes to mind first. And I was noting this article that came out in December, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen here. Dynatrace posted this: why Dynatrace is investing in open source software development. So the business capitalist in me is saying, hold on a second, aren't we supposed to be making software to make money unless you're just a really nice person and you want to make open source software? But as I began to talk to people in the open source community, especially in observability, I found out that there's a shared problem out there that everybody has, and the value there's a value in having open source. The real value in the commercial side is something else other than necessarily what you're building in open source. And I'll let you talk more to that. But before I do, I just wanted to show our audience here. There's an open source program and a charter around this. And there are multiple projects which we can talk about that Dynatrace has that is part of an open source initiative. It's an open source office. Can you speak to this and tell me kind of what this is all about?
Of course, obviously the market and the way we provide software to our user have significantly changed over the years. And open source, a few years back, we were considering to say, it's nice, it's a sandbox. Do I really want to take the risk and use it in my production environment? I don't know. I think now the mentality has changed a lot, and especially now since the usage and the merging of solution like Prometheus, for example, when it's been launched, it was open source. It's still open source, and now if you look around, I mean, there's so many organizations relying on collecting metrics just through this platform Prometheus, which is, I think, just a wonderful story. And similar to Kubernetes, now I know how many companies are using an open source solution to manage their workload in production or in non-production environments. It's just impressive. And I think now, I think that the advantage when you build solution that are for the open source community is that everyone is involved and everyone can contribute in a way, share the feedback, and make the solution even better over the years. So I think that's the model which I think which everyone looks is expecting. I mean, if you go in a commercial way, I think it's great, but usually we move to waterfall, to agile, to DevOps to be more align with what our customers are expecting from our products. And I think that is great. But I think with open source, you get that feedback as well, and also it's a way of giving a platform or a solution to everyone, and extend the potential capacity of that solution. For example, in my role now, since I started this journey of building the YouTube channel Is It Observable, I've been focusing on open source solutions. And if you look on the cloud native space, I mean, there's so many open source frameworks there, so many way of collecting things, parsing things, pushing things somewhere to store it in one of your backend of your choice. I mean, another example is OpenTelemetry. I mean, just now, everyone, it's a pretty buzz word to say OpenTelemetry, but I would say that now with over the years, the framework itself has been more and more stable, especially for the traces. Now everything is more or less finalized. Metrics is coming in very soon in a GA version. Logs is promising as well, and I'm so excited to see a standard that has been defined to the market. So then, as end users, I can rely on those standards, which is open source, but then the usage of the data that has been collected by those framework, then you can do that with any solution of your choice, and then this is where the very solution that will store and present the data to the user will make some difference in a way, providing feature that will be smarter or whatever. But I think I'm so excited to have at least that standard, that so everyone can building and transition to one tool to the other without, I don't know, having a huge effort by moving all those proprietary agents by replacing with new agents. So I think that's great. I'm so excited.
I agree. And so let's talk about a couple of the different projects that Dynatrace has brought to the market. One of them is Keptn. So this is considered to be an open source software package that's available from Dynatrace. Can you talk about Keptn for a minute? Like, what is it, and why has it been offered out here as an open source project?
So now Dynatrace has invested in this framework more than three years plus, I think. And the main concept of Keptn. So first of all, why did we build that framework? We came to we looked around us on how people were delivering their CI/CD process. And at that time, we were mostly relying on traditional continuous integration servers, where you have to have this complex pipeline, which usually was based on code, so Groovy scripts, for example, in case of Jenkins. And if you have that in your project, then you make a step back to look at the project close to you, to your neighbor. You realize that someone has copy-pasted one of your portion of your pipeline, and he has put it there as well. So people were building the pipeline, managing their integration within the pipeline, and everything was based on code. So you were building code that will be deploying our code. And at the end, it's very hard to maintain, very complicated to get started. So Keptn was being built initially to say, okay, let's simplify everything. And to simplify that, the design of Keptn had to be relying on events. So I am building, I need something that trigger an event to say, hey, my task is finished, go ahead, do something else. So after build, I may want to do, let's say, some testing. So I do my tests. So the Keptn sends an event, and then the testing tool that has subscribed to that event will pick it up, do the work, and then send an event back to say, hey, I have finished my test, you can go further on your process. So I think the event-driven approach makes the things more smoother in terms of workflow and simpler in general. But Keptn is not only designed for continuous delivery. There are, in fact, 3 distinct use cases that Keptn can cover. So progress delivery we mentioned, so build to go to production. Then you have the which means everything which is before you ship to production to your production environment. Then you have the quality gate. So I said, I already have invested so many years in GitLab or Jenkins. I don't want to transition right now to Keptn because the effort will be too big. Then I don't need to. I can just utilize few features that Keptn provides, especially the quality gates, to calculate a score, to automate the analysis. So there's so many use cases that makes Keptn so powerful. And the last use case that Keptn provides is everything which is after the deployment in production. So when you are in production, you are probably fishing for remediation process, alerting, and so on. So there is so many use cases. And the great thing is over the years, Keptn has so many new integration. Prometheus, of course, Dynatrace, Tricentis Neoload, JMeter. So there is so many Litmus Chaos for chaos engineering. So there is so many tooling available and that are connected to Keptn. So the usage of Keptn makes things simpler. And if I use, for example, a specific integration, let's say today I'm doing some load testing with JMeter, and I want to transition to Tricentis Neoload, then I don't have to rewrite everything. It's just unplugging one tool and connecting to the other. So even transitioning your tools or your integration that you rely on to build your software will be very smooth. And that's how Keptn has been built. And I think the great thing is there is also now a notion of events, and there are other open source solution that relies on events. So CDF, so the cloud, the Continuous Delivery Foundation, they are starting to build also standardizing those events, and Keptn wants to be compatible and utilize that standard. So then if you use any CD or continuous delivery solution that are sending those events, then Keptn will talk the same language, so you will be able to build any type of workflow that you have in your mind.
Is there a commercial version of Keptn as well as the open source version?
So we started with the open source solution, and now we started to slowly onboard few customers to a SaaS version. So in fact, a SaaS version is like a module in Dynatrace. We call it the cloud automation. So cloud automation comes with several toolings that has been built over the years. So Keptn, of course. And then when it comes to SRE's practice, there is a very important aspect of SRE's task is removing toil. I mean, you don't want to do manual test stuff. So if I have to deploy stuff and then go back to my observability backend and configure my alerting, configuring the dashboarding, it doesn't make sense. You will spend too much time doing those type of tasks. So why don't I use something that will allow me to configure everything? And that is another open source initiative that Dynatrace has built over the years called Monaco, and that comes along with the cloud automation as well.
Okay, great segue, because that's the second thing I was going to ask you about was this other open source project called Monaco. And let me just share that screen as well. This is monitoring as code through this same open source initiative. Can you speak to that and what this is all about?
So initially, the story behind Monaco was a couple of years back. We have our service teams that helps customers to be onboarded, and you can imagine that onboarding an organization that has, I don't know, 10,000 plus servers, plus clusters, plus I don't know how many teams they have. Configuring manually everything in Dynatrace could be could be very time consuming. So the Monaco was a way of onboarding those customers in a very quick way. So over the couple of hours, the service team was able to deploy, I don't know, thousands of servers that has been automated, instrumented by Dynatrace with everything configured. So that was impressive. So initially we built that to and extended depending on the need that we had on the field, and now the usage could seem very difficult or technical, but honestly it's very simple. So I tested out myself when I arrived at Dynatrace, and there is so many things you can do it. So especially building dashboards, automating that approach, managing all the user privileges between who can access to this data or not. All those things which is very important for organizations. If you can automate that and save time, that's wonderful. And that's all about Monaco. And Monaco, I think now we are in we are at the moment where we want to bring even more features to automate even more things. So stay tuned. I think a lot of great things will happen with the Monaco project.
Awesome. So getting back to this first article where they talk about they're changing the name in Dynatrace from the Innovation Lab to the Open Source Program Office. So there's a full title to this, the OSPO. So they're now, I guess, in charge of this initiative. What other things might we expect in the near future from Dynatrace? Or are there upcoming projects that are in addition to these two we've mentioned?
Yeah, so we want to open source. We want to be the first class citizens related to open source, and we already started over the years. In fact, there is a lot of well-known framework that we mentioned, like Open Telemetry, for example, where Dynatrace is investing a lot. A lot of internal resources are actively working as we speak in various projects related to Open Telemetry, because I think we can help the community to improve and add more and more features. So I think for us, it's very part of the spirit of the company. So open telemetry is one thing, but we also contribute in other type of aspect. The idea is that there are a lot of new solution framework that merge out of the market, and I think from us, from a Dynatrace perspective, first being involved by contributing to those framework. First of all, we are bringing value for the market, but it's also for us a way of understanding the new technologies and be on the forefront of the new technology. So then we can manage and in a very early stage how we can gonna bring it in our product later on. So that is a way of making sure that we are always at the forefront of the innovation, because as we look at around us, the innovation goes now from open source. So if you're not involved in open source, then you can miss the opportunity to know that something is out there and making sure that you're able to support it at the right moment.
Awesome. Well, this is really good information and it helps answer a lot of the questions that I've had. I'm sure other people have had as well. I want to thank you so much for being on the program today. And I know that probably before the year out, we'll be able to get together soon, and maybe it won't be virtually, and we'll be able to do some more stuff together. So thanks again, Henrik, for being on the show.
Thanks, Scott, for inviting me. And for those who's listening to the SMC Journal, if you want to have content to learn on how to observe things, stay tuned and pay attention to my channel, the Is It Observable channel. There is a lot of tutorials that I'm building and helping our community around observability.
Absolutely. I endorse it. I watch it, and we will put links in our show notes to all of your channels and shows as well and share it with the audience. So thank you.
Thanks.
You can reach me at scottmoore.consulting. There's my LinkedIn profile URL, as well as my Twitter handle. You can also reach me by email at help@scottmoore.consulting. Today's podcast is sponsored by Micro Focus, makers of Load Runner Solutions. Performance matters. Did you know that Load Runner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners? Join this community at community.microfocus.com. Check our show notes on the YouTube channel as well as the SMC Journal, this particular entry, and you'll see that link to the community. This podcast is also sponsored by Keysight Technologies and the makers of Eggplant Performance. There's also a link to that on our show notes, as well as the YouTube video show notes as well. Eggplant Performance is another load testing tool that you should be checking out. And we appreciate both of these sponsors for supporting the performance community if you can. If you like this content, give me a like, maybe share this content on your social network as well. But subscribe to the YouTube channel, because this lets me know that I'm headed in the right direction and you want to see more of this type of content. So again, let's keep the conversation going. And what do you think? Open source works well with commercials work well with open source. It was a good idea that Dynatrace created this open source initiative project and has an entire lab and division dedicated to this. I'd like to hear your feedback. And until the next SMC Journal, where it's all about performance, I'm Scott Moore, and we'll see you next time.